Sovereign citizen mocks police officer, then stunned when she gets arrested. Picture this. The mockingbirds launch their shrill morning chorus, jolting Brenda Kensington awake. Sunlight, filtered unevenly through grimy blinds, painted stripes across her face, highlighting the deep parentheses bracketing her mouth. She swatted the snooze button on her phone, a cracked dinosaur from 2012, and groaned. Today loomed. Today, she dragged the crooked system into the light. She swung her legs off the bed, the threadbare carpet a gritty assault on her soles. I am autonomous, she declared, her voice a morning roughened croak. I owe nothing to these despotic regimes. I am the authority. 3 times she repeated the mantra, each iteration gaining volume and conviction. A vital ritual, her personal bulwark against the world's encroaching shadows. In the tiny bathroom, she splashed frigid water on her face. The mirror reflected a woman sculpted by years of perceived betrayals. Where hope once danced, her eyes now held a steely, suspicious glint. As she brushed, she mentally rehearsed her opening salvo, savoring the imagined discomfort of the officers she intended to unmask. A quick breakfast of stale granola bar and tepid coffee later, Brenda retreated to her war room, a corner of the living room buried under drifts of legal documents, conspiracy manifestos, and obsolete tech. Spread out before her lay her meticulously assembled dossier, photocopies of obscure rulings, frantic, handwritten notes choked with jargon, and a well-thumbed, laminated Magna Carta. Her weapons cache for the fight ahead. She gave her recording equipment a final check, twin digital recorders, a pen concealing a miniature camera, and her stalwart smartphone, fully charged for the coming fray. Brenda tweaked the pen cam, ensuring an unobstructed view of her sternum. Evidence, irrefutable evidence, was key. Operation Sunshine, she breathed, a humorless smile twitching at the corner of her lips. Today, we disinfect. One last review of the plan. She'd stride into the precinct, declare her status as a free individual beyond their jurisdiction, and demand to see their charter. The inevitable refusal would trigger her carefully crafted speech, citing arcane precedents and dismantling their supposed legitimacy. Chaos was expected, embraced even. Chaos was the acid that revealed the system's rot. She paused, her fingers tracing the worn cover of the U.S. Constitution. Brenda hadn't always been this way. Once, she'd been a kindergarten teacher, planting seeds of knowledge and believing in the promise of progress. Then came the divorce, the foreclosure, the gnawing sense of being exploited by a rigged game. Gradually, the government morphed in her mind into the enemy, a parasitic entity intent on total control. The sovereign citizen movement had provided an unexpected balm, belonging, purpose, a narrative to explain her pain, and a means of striking back at the injustices she felt so acutely. Now, she hungered for the validation that exposing the police would bring. She envisioned the viral videos, the adoring comments, the profound satisfaction of finally being seen, finally being recognized. Drawing a deep breath, Brenda hefted her oversized purse, crammed with legal, ammunition and recording gear. Showtime. Time to confront the monster. Time to demonstrate that Brenda Kensington was not to be dismissed. Stepping out the door, her eyes blazed with zealous fervor. Today, the world would witness the champion she knew herself to be. The reckoning was at hand. Confrontation at the front desk. The automatic doors hissed open, and Brenda Kensington swept into the police station, the harsh fluorescent lights glinting off the oversized sunglasses perched on her nose. Her phone, already recording, was held high, capturing the slightly bewildered faces of a couple of officers near the entrance. "Good morning, public servants," she announced, her voice echoing in the sterile space. "Just exercising my right to oversee the protectors of the peace, or lack thereof, in this jurisdiction." She marched towards the front desk, a low counter of bulletproof glass separating the public from the inner workings of the station. Officer Maria Miller, a young woman with kind eyes and a neatly braided ponytail, looked up from her computer, a polite, if slightly weary, smile on her face. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you?" Officer Miller asked. Brenda stopped abruptly, fixing Miller with a withering stare. I demand to speak with your supervisor immediately. Miller blinked, her smile faltering. May I ask the reason for your request, ma'am? Brenda huffed, adjusting her sunglasses. That information is not relevant to my request. However, for the record, I am here to address the egregious violation of my inalienable rights under common law, as outlined in the Magna Carta, specifically clauses 39 and 40, regarding due process and the denial of justice. Also, I believe there is a conspiracy afoot. Miller's brow furrowed. Ma'am, I'm not sure I understand. Can you explain what happened? Brenda's voice rose, her finger jabbing towards the glass. I will not explain myself to a subordinate. I am a free and natural person operating outside the jurisdiction of your corporate fiction. I insist on speaking with someone who understands the gravity of the situation. Miller sighed inwardly, years of training kicking in. Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but I need to understand the situation before I can get my supervisor involved. Perhaps if you could just briefly explain. Briefly? Brenda screeched, her voice echoing. My liberty has been infringed upon. My property has been unjustly seized. And you ask me to be brief? This is a matter of constitutional significance. She tapped her phone screen. This is going straight to YouTube, by the way. The world needs to see how you people operate. Miller's cheeks flushed slightly. Ma'am, filming is permitted in public areas, but please keep your voice down. You're disturbing the peace. Brenda threw her head back and laughed, a shrill, grating sound. Disturbing the peace? What peace? The peace of your tyrannical regime? I am merely exercising my First Amendment rights to expose the truth. She leaned closer to the glass, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. They're watching you, you know. They're watching all of us. Miller remained calm, her voice even. Ma'am, I assure you, no one is watching you. We're just trying to do our jobs and help people. Now, if you could just tell me what happened. Help people? You call yourselves helpers? You're enforcers. Agents of the system. You're nothing but... Before Brenda could finish her tirade, a door behind the front desk swung open, and a woman in a crisp uniform, her face etched with barely concealed impatience, strode towards them. What's going on here, Miller? I could hear the yelling from my office. Escalation and public display. Brenda Kensington's voice, already a sharp nail on a chalkboard, ratcheted higher. You are obstructing a lawful audit. I am exercising my rights. Are you aware that you are violating the Constitution? Her phone, clutched in a hand bedecked with faux diamond rings, shook as she filmed Officer Miller. The harsh midday sun glinted off the lens, momentarily blinding Miller. Miller sighed, the sound barely audible over the hum of traffic. Ma'am, again, I'm just asking for your identification. We received a call about a suspicious individual near the bank. If you can just show me. Suspicious? I'm suspicious because I'm exercising my constitutional rights? Is that what we've come to in this tyrannical police state? Brenda's voice boomed, carrying across the parking lot. A young couple, laden with shopping bags from the nearby outlet mall, paused and turned their heads. An elderly man watering the petunias outside the bank stopped spraying, his brow furrowed. Miller felt a prickle of unease. This was escalating quickly. Ma'am, with all due respect, yelling and making accusations isn't helping the situation. I'm just trying to do my job. She kept her voice even, the years of training kicking in, pushing down the frustration that clawed at her. Your job is to protect and serve, not to harass law-abiding citizens. Brenda retorted, jabbing a finger in the air. I demand to speak to your supervisor. Immediately. The couple had stopped completely now, whispering to each other. The elderly man was staring openly, his watering can forgotten. A security guard from the bank emerged, his hand hovering near his radio. Miller took a step back, creating a little more space. Ma'am, I understand you want to speak to a supervisor. I can arrange that. But first, I need to verify your identity. I already told you. I am Brenda Kensington, a sovereign citizen, and I am not required to provide you with any identification. Brenda puffed out her chest, her voice laced with triumph. More heads turned. A small crowd was beginning to gather, drawn by the raised voices and the spectacle of a woman confronting a police officer. Cell phones were appearing, recording the scene. Miller's stomach clenched. This was exactly what she didn't want. "Ma'am," Miller said, her voice dropping slightly, hoping to de-escalate. "I'm going to need you to calm down. You're creating a disturbance." "A disturbance? You're the one creating the disturbance by violating my rights!" Brenda shrieked, the word echoing off the glass windows of the bank. Miller knew she was losing control of the situation. She reached for her radio, her thumb pressing the transmit button. "Dispatch, this is Officer Miller, Unit 34. Requesting backup at the First National Bank on Elm Street. Code 2. Possible, uncooperative individual. And advise supervisor." She released the button, her face grim. Brenda, still filming, let out a triumphant cackle. "See? See how they call for backup when they can't bully me? They're scared of the truth." She turned towards the growing crowd, her voice booming. "These officers are violating my rights. They are trying to suppress the truth. I am conducting a lawful audit." Miller watched the crowd, a knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. The elderly man had put down his watering can and was now filming with his own phone. The security guard was talking urgently into his radio. This wasn't just a routine call anymore. This was a public display, and it was spinning out of control. Sergeant Davies steps in. A low rumble preceded the squad car, pulling to a stop behind Officer Miller's vehicle. Sergeant Davies emerged, his face a landscape of weary experience etched with the harsh lines of countless late nights and difficult calls. He adjusted his belt, the leather creaking softly in the sudden quiet that Brenda's tirade had momentarily ceded. He held up a hand to Officer Miller, a silent "Stand down," before turning his attention to the source of the commotion. "Ma'am," he began, his voice a low, steady baritone that cut through the air without raising in volume. "I understand there's been some disagreement." Brenda puffed out her chest, her floral blouse straining against the gesture. "Disagreement? I'm being harassed. My rights are being violated. I haven't done anything wrong, and she's demanding my papers." Davies took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. "Officer Miller is investigating a possible noise complaint, ma'am. Providing identification is standard procedure, especially when there's reasonable suspicion, which, given the volume of the music earlier, I'd say is warranted." He paused, letting his words sink in. "It's not a violation of your rights to be asked for identification in this context. It's a legal requirement." CJ, watching from across the street, zoomed in with her phone camera. The angle wasn't perfect, but it captured the scene. She felt a knot forming in her stomach. What had started as amusement was now edging towards something more unsettling. Davies, though calm, projected an aura of authority that seemed to shrink Brenda's defiant stance. "Reasonable suspicion is a subjective term," Brenda retorted, her voice rising again. "I know my rights. I'm not required to participate in this unlawful." "Ma'am," Davies interrupted, his tone hardening slightly. "Let's be clear. Obstructing a police officer in the performance of their duty is a crime. Refusing to provide identification when requested in a lawful investigation is also a crime. We can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way. The choice is yours." He gestured towards the open door of his squad car. The air crackled with tension. Even the usual hum of the neighborhood seemed to fade. CJ pressed record, her thumb hovering over the volume button. She wanted to capture everything, every nuance, every word. She found herself strangely conflicted. A part of her still chuckled at Brenda's audacity, at her ridiculous invocation of obscure legal arguments. But another part, the part that believed in fairness and justice, felt a growing unease. Davies' patience, while admirable, seemed to be wearing thin. The potential for things to escalate was palpable. Brenda's face flushed an unbecoming shade of purple. "I am a free and sovereign individual. I do not consent to being governed by your tyrannical laws." Davies sighed, a sound that spoke volumes of his years on the force. Ma'am, with all due respect, that's not how this works. The law applies to everyone. And right now you are breaking it. He pulled out his own notepad. Name and address, please. Brenda remained stubbornly silent, her eyes narrowed, a defiant glint in their depths. The only sound was the chirping of crickets, a counterpoint to the escalating drama. CJ's thumb tightened on her phone. She knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was far from over. The point of no return. Oh, look who it is. Barney Fife come to back up his deputy? Brenda drawled, her voice dripping with sarcasm as Sergeant Davies approached. She leaned back against the gleaming hood of her SUV, arms crossed, a picture of defiant arrogance. The late afternoon sun glinted off her oversized sunglasses, obscuring her eyes but doing nothing to hide the smirk playing on her lips. Davies sighed internally. He'd heard Miller's call, the barely concealed frustration in his voice, and knew exactly what he was walking into. Another sovereign citizen convinced they were above the law. He squared his shoulders, the weight of his duty pressing down on him. Ma'am, he said, his voice calm but firm. I understand there's been a misunderstanding. Officer Miller is simply trying to ascertain your identity in relation to a reported incident. Brenda laughed, a sharp, unpleasant sound that grated on Davies' nerves. Misunderstanding? That's rich. He's violating my rights, demanding I produce papers like some Gestapo officer. She spat the word out as if it left a bad taste in her mouth. Davies ignored the hyperbole. Ma'am, with all due respect, refusing to identify yourself when asked by a law enforcement officer during an investigation is obstructing police business. It's a misdemeanor. Brenda's smile widened, a predatory glint entering her hidden eyes. Obstructing? Oh, I'm sorry, are you suggesting I'm somehow hindering your investigation? She made air quotes with her fingers. I'm simply exercising my constitutional right to remain silent. That right applies to self-incrimination, ma'am, not providing basic identification. Davies corrected, his patience wearing thin. He could smell the expensive perfume wafting from her, a cloying sweetness that clashed with the sourness of the situation. The asphalt shimmered in the heat, reflecting the tension that hung thick in the air. Oh, I see, Brenda purred, tilting her head. So, you're a legal scholar now, Sergeant. What was it? Davies? I'm sure you know the entire Corpus Juris Civilis by heart. Tell me, Sergeant, have you read the 14th Amendment lately? Perhaps a little United States versus Miller? Or are you just going to blindly follow orders, regardless of their legality? Davies felt a muscle twitch in his jaw. He dealt with enough self-proclaimed legal experts to fill a courtroom. Ma'am, I'm asking you one last time. Please provide your driver's license and vehicle registration. He kept his voice even, but a steely edge had crept in. Brenda pushed herself off the SUV, her movements slow and deliberate. She stood before Davies, a head shorter but radiating an aura of arrogant defiance. Is that a threat, Sergeant? She asked, her voice low and challenging. He didn't back down. It's a warning, ma'am. Obstructing police business is a crime, and refusing to comply with a lawful order will only compound the problem. Brenda stepped closer, her voice barely a whisper. Then arrest me. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. Go on, Sergeant. Arrest me. I dare you. The smirk was gone now, replaced by a cold, unwavering challenge. The scent of her perfume intensified, almost suffocating. The hum of the cicadas in the nearby trees seemed to amplify the silence that followed, a pregnant pause before the storm. The arrest. Sergeant Davies pinched the bridge of his nose, the fluorescent lights of the gas station parking lot reflecting harshly off his balding head. He dealt with enough tonight. Miller, arrest her. Officer Miller blinked, her youthful face betraying a flicker of hesitation. Sergeant, are you sure? I haven't even seen any ID. She's refusing to identify herself, being disruptive, and obstructing our investigation. That's enough. Cuff her. Davies' voice was flat, devoid of emotion. He'd seen this song and dance 100 times before. Brenda Kensington's carefully applied lipstick seemed to crack as her jaw dropped. Arrest me? On what grounds? This is outrageous. I know my rights. Miller sighed, her shoulders slumping almost imperceptibly. She approached Brenda, her hand instinctively resting on the butt of her sidearm. Ma'am, I'm going to have to place you under arrest. Please turn around and put your hands behind your back. Her voice was polite but firm. You touch me and you'll regret it. Brenda shrieked, taking a step back. Her eyes darted around the parking lot, searching for, what? An escape route? Sympathy? Ma'am, please don't make this difficult. Miller pleaded, extending her hand. Just cooperate. Brenda crossed her arms, a defiant sneer twisting her lips. I am a sovereign citizen. I do not consent to your unlawful authority. Davies let out a weary exhale. He'd hoped to avoid this. He stepped forward, his presence immediately commanding the space. That's enough. Miller, do it. As Miller reached for Brenda's arm, Brenda twisted away, her handbag swinging wildly. Get away from me, you thugs! This is harassment. I demand to speak to your supervisor. The contents of her purse spilled onto the asphalt, a tube of crimson lipstick, a half-eaten granola bar, a wad of crumpled receipts, and a small, silver-plated derringer. Miller froze, her hand hovering in the air. Her eyes widened slightly, flicking to the weapon and then back to Brenda's face. Davies moved with practiced speed. He grabbed Brenda's other arm, pinning it behind her back. You are resisting arrest and interfering with a police investigation. Now cooperate. Brenda bucked and thrashed, her nails raking across Miller's forearm. Let go of me! I'm being assaulted! Her voice was high-pitched and frantic. The sweet scent of her perfume mingled with the acrid smell of burning rubber from a nearby semi. Miller, despite the sting in her arm, maintained her composure. She efficiently retrieved a pair of handcuffs from her belt, and with Davies' assistance, secured Brenda's wrists behind her back. You haven't heard the last of this. Brenda spat, her face flushed with rage. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to own this town. Davies ignored her ranting. He nodded to Miller, who began to read Brenda her Miranda rights. The words echoed in the humid night air, a stark contrast to Brenda's increasingly desperate cries. As Miller recited the familiar phrases, Davies picked up the derringer, carefully placing it in an evidence bag. He knew this wasn't just about a traffic stop anymore. This was escalating. Behind bars. The cruiser reeked of lukewarm coffee and past mistakes. Brenda Kensington, wedged into the back seat, still seethed. This is unlawful confinement. I'm a sovereign individual. Your regulations hold no sway over me. Behind the wheel, Officer Miller exhaled wearily. He'd heard the rhetoric ad nauseum. Officer Reynolds' shotgun simply shook his head. Outside, the swirling emergency lights cast an erratic crimson and cerulean strobe within their steel shell. The jail's intake area presented a sharp contrast to the sun-drenched avenue where Brenda's journey had been interrupted. Overhead, buzzing fluorescents cast a jaundiced pallor upon the scarred linoleum. The air, thick with the cloying scent of disinfectant mingled with the bitter aroma of broken dreams, felt heavy. As Miller attempted to usher Brenda inside, she dug in her heels, a stubborn anchor refusing to be weighed. I demand legal counsel. I invoke the Fifth. I'm being held against my volition. Her pronouncements reverberated in the sterile atmosphere, rebounding off the unadorned concrete blocks. Ma'am, your cooperation would be appreciated, Miller offered, his voice laced with fatigue. We just need to process your paperwork. Process me? I am not a manufactured item. I am a sentient, self-governing woman. Reynolds moved alongside her. Let's try to make this a little easier on everyone, Brenda. He indicated the booking counter, where a deputy, radiating ennui, stood ready with a stack of documents. Unyielding, Brenda stood firm, arms crossed high across her chest, a spark of pure contrariness in her gaze. I will not legitimize this farce. I will provide no data. I am utilizing my right to remain silent. The deputy, S. Perez, according to her nameplate, sighed, the sound carrying in the quiet space. "Look, we have 2 ways to go about this. The simple one, or the one that's less so. Your call." Brenda inflated her chest. "I am not swayed by coercion. I am fully cognizant of my entitlements." Perez exchanged a look with the officers. "All right then," she remarked, her tone devoid of inflection. "The latter it is." 2 female deputies advanced on Brenda, their faces impassive. "Ma'am, we require your cooperation." When Brenda resisted, they steered her, with practiced efficiency, toward a small room adjacent to the booking hall. The sound of Brenda's escalating vocalizations diminished as they disappeared within. Minutes drifted by. The drone of the lights seemed to intensify. Miller rested against the counter, observing Perez tap rapidly at the keyboard. Eventually, the deputies reappeared, Brenda held firmly in their grasp. She was disheveled, strands of hair escaping their moorings, but her spirit of resistance appeared unbroken. "We located her driver's license within her handbag," Perez announced, displaying the laminated rectangle. "Brenda Kensington, birthday July 12, 1972. Brenda shot Perez a venomous glare. "That is not my true self. That is a fabricated persona, a construct devised by the state to exert dominion over me." Perez disregarded the outburst. "Charges are filed: resisting an officer, disturbing the peace, and operation of a motor vehicle without proper authorization." She glanced toward Miller. "Anything you gentlemen wish to append to that list?" Miller demurred. "That will suffice for the moment." He watched as Brenda was escorted in the direction of the holding cells, her voice still carrying on its tide of complaints. The clang of the steel door echoed behind her, finally muting her invective, at least temporarily. Reality sets in. Chill radiated from the concrete, a persistent theft of warmth even through the threadbare blanket. Brenda Kensington shuddered, yanking the coarse fabric tighter. The orange jumpsuit chafed, a tactile insult to her current predicament. This wasn't her place. Not her sun-drenched kitchen, the kettle whistling for her morning infusion, the meticulously researched articles awaiting their final polish before she deployed them against the system's failings. The day's debacle replayed in her mind, each scene a stinging rebuke to her convictions. The siren's wail. Officer Miller's unwavering, almost pitying, expression. The heavy thud of the cruiser door. Ink-stained fingers, the cold steel of the booking desk, the sheer indignity of it all. Her protests about her rights, her citations of maritime law, her insistence on the significance of that damned gold fringe, all dismissed with weary sighs. They processed her like an inconvenience. Her stomach growled, a base interruption to the symphony of her outrage. The pallid, unidentifiable meal offered earlier lay untouched on its sterile tray. She simply couldn't stomach it. It felt like capitulation. But her body held no allegiance to principles. It demanded sustenance. Brenda tightened her embrace, rocking almost imperceptibly. She'd always prided herself on her courage, her unwavering commitment to truth. Now, confined within these bare walls, apprehension gnawed at the edges of her resolve. It was a different beast than righteous fury, a clammy, formless dread of the unknown, of utter isolation. She pictured her online community, her fellow patriots, the awakened. Where were they now? Amplifying her message, she fervently hoped. Galvanizing support. Preparing for the inevitable unraveling of this fraudulent regime. Yet a nagging doubt coiled in her gut. Had anyone even registered her absence? The overhead fluorescent buzzed, painting distorted shapes on the wall. Brenda squeezed her eyes shut, desperate to extinguish the harsh light, the oppressive chill, the insidious doubt. Could she have been mistaken? The question landed like a physical blow. Years dedicated to research, unwavering faith, the sacrifices made at the altar of this cause, could they all be predicated on flawed assumptions? On twisted legal interpretations and carefully curated historical fragments? She recalled the confident assertions of her mentors, their fiery rhetoric, the seductive promises of liberation and autonomy. Their certainty had been intoxicating, persuasive. But now, trapped in the brutal reality of her imprisonment, their pronouncements seemed hollow, echoes from a distant shore. Perhaps they were as adrift as she. A solitary tear escaped, tracing a glistening path down her cheek. Brenda scrubbed it away with a furious swipe. She wouldn't crack. She refused to display weakness. But the tears persisted, silent, relentless. The frigid floor, the stuttering light, the insistent hunger, it was all too tangible. The reassuring fiction of a shadowy cabal she could outmaneuver with arcane legal arguments was dissolving, leaving behind a terrifying realization. She was Brenda Kensington, alone in jail, and utterly without a plan. A glimmer of understanding. Cold steel kissed Brenda's cheek as she strained to see beyond the bars. The corridor stretched away, a monotonous vista of gray, punctuated by the erratic flicker of overhead lights. Each electrical whine amplified the hollowness that gnawed at her stomach. Since the arrest, food had been a forgotten luxury. The tepid gruel offered earlier felt more like punishment than sustenance. A deeper shadow fell across the ground, and Brenda straightened, pulling back from the metal. Officer Miller stood there, weariness carved into the lines around her eyes, a reflection of Brenda's own despair. A slim file, softened at the edges from handling, was clutched in her hand. "Miss Kensington," Miller began, her tone subdued, almost gentle. "May I come in?" Brenda offered no answer, no invitation. Miller interpreted her silence as consent and worked the lock. The cell door echoed, a sharp, metallic sound in the confined space. "I realize this is uncomfortable," Miller offered, settling on the edge of the cot. Its threadbare mattress provided scant relief. "But I wanted to clarify a few things." Brenda finally spoke, her voice raspy. "Clarify what? That you abducted me from my own land? That you're trampling on my fundamental freedoms?" Miller sighed, a deflated sound that spoke volumes. "Ms. Kensington, you were apprehended for resisting a lawful arrest, obstructing an officer of the court, and operating a motor vehicle without proper licensing and registration." She flipped open the file. "These are established laws, agreed upon by the citizens of this state. Laws to which you are subject, irrespective of your convictions." Brenda snorted. "Those are mere decrees, fictions conjured by a corrupt establishment. I am a free individual, a sovereign. I am not bound by your strictures." Miller closed the file, her gaze unwavering. "That's where the misunderstanding lies, Ms. Kensington. Whether you condone them or not, these laws exist, and they apply to everyone within this jurisdiction. Your refusal to comply placed yourself, and others, in jeopardy." Brenda remained defiant, yet a tremor of uncertainty flickered in her gaze. Had her actions truly endangered others? The memory of the officer stumbling to avoid her vehicle replayed in her mind. "I appreciate that you hold strong convictions," Miller proceeded, her voice softening its edge. "And I respect that. But those convictions do not exempt you from upholding the law. There are avenues, Ms. Kensington, legal avenues, to challenge those laws if you disagree with them. But outright defiance inevitably results in situations like this." She extracted a pamphlet from the file. "This outlines your legal entitlements and delineates the procedure for appealing your arrest. It also lists resources available to help you navigate the legal framework." She laid the pamphlet on the cot. Brenda scrutinized it, her lower lip trembling almost imperceptibly. "Understanding Your Rights." The title felt pedestrian, commonplace. A stark contrast to the lofty declarations of liberty she had embraced. "I'm not suggesting you have to renounce your beliefs," Miller stated, rising to her feet. "But I am imploring you to consider the ramifications of your actions. Ignorance of the law is no defense, Ms. Kensington. Nor is dissent." Miller lingered at the door, her hand resting on the cold handle. "Reflect on it. Please." The lock snicked shut. Brenda was alone once more. The quiet descended, heavier now, more oppressive. She picked up the pamphlet, its thin pages rustling in her grasp. "Understanding Your Rights."